Some churches still aren't so sure about text messaging their people. Or maybe they're just not bothering with it because they think that there are newer and better ways to reach their people now. But they're wrong. Hey there, it's Matthew Warner, and this is the Finding Uno Show. Welcome back to the Finding Uno Show. Who's Uno? Oh, you know Uno. He's that one lost sheep the shepherd leaves the 99 to go after, and we are here to help you find him. I'm your host, Matthew Warner. I'm joined by my co-host, Matthew Sewell. G'day, Matt.
Hey, Matt. Good to be chatting with you today, as always.
So this is something we see a lot here at Flocknote because Flocknote is actually a pretty unique tool in combining both email and texting capabilities. But we see all the time, a lot of churches get on board because they want to do the emailing. They know they need to email everybody. It's sort of the backbone of most of the communication going out for each ministry and the church as a whole. But they have this whole capability to text message, and they're not using it. We have a lot of churches that are loving it, of course, and it's been one of the fastest growing parts of what we offer over the last few years. But it's interesting how a lot of churches are still hesitating to try text messaging.
Yeah, it is something. It always surprises me that I text all the time. But I always even use the example like my grandma and my great aunt who are in their 80s. They'll text me back a lot of times faster than I text my friends back, right? So when it comes to churches, it's still a little bit surprising always that there's such an aversion to using texting, or at least venturing out into it. A lot of times it's, we've never done that before, so why would we start now? We've got all these other things going on, and email is fine, or the bulletin is fine, or whatever it might be. But it seems like it always boils down to some form of fear that we're going to bother people, and our pews are already emptying fast enough, and kids aren't coming back to get their kids baptized fast enough, or whatever it might be, right? So why would we potentially alienate that many more people? It obviously begs the question that people aren't already ignoring some form of your communications, which, as we know, they are. And when you send something out to a large group of people, you can always expect unsubscribes. But it always seems to boil down to some form of fear or aversion of trying new things, something along those lines. And so I really like this topic today for that reason, to be able to tackle that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It definitely stems from a type of fear that we don't have something important enough to say that is worthy of a text message. That's part of it for some folks. Some of it is a fear of not being able to control, do I want to text everybody versus just the group of people that need it, which is a good sort of sensitivity to have. And we can talk about that too. That goes back to one of our previous topics on segmenting lists and being able to reach different groups within your broader community, because certainly you don't need to send a text message to everybody very often. And then some of it, I think, is just, maybe not quite feeling comfortable with the technology yet, to kind of let loose with it. So we're going to talk about some of those things today and try to address 3 reasons your church should be text messaging your people, because it is such a powerful channel that if your church is not using text messaging right now, you are really missing out.
Yeah, I agree. So the 3 things, and maybe before we get into the 3 things, it applies really well to one of our last topics, where the reason why you should be emailing, or the reason why you should be emailing, is not because the bulletin doesn't work necessarily, right? You should be emailing because you have good things, you're writing good emails, all that sort of thing. So there's the temptation that, we haven't texted before, so let's start texting because nobody's reading our emails, right? So that's not one of the 3 reasons. Spoiler.
That's right.
But the 3 reasons, the first one, which I always really like, is that there's a 99% open rate. Virtually anybody who you send a text to is going to open it. So you can start there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's right. A 99% open rate. There is no other channel on the face of the planet that gets that kind of open rate when you're talking about these kinds of communication channels. 99% open rate. Virtually, you send it, they will get the message you can basically rely on. And that's partially because it is so short and sweet. So it forces you to be short because it's a limited amount of space, which is a great habit as a communicator to be able to get to the point. We talk about that a lot here. But essentially, before they can decide not to read it, they've already read it. And that's partially because it's so short. And then also because it is the most disruptive channel. So it is one of the most disruptive ways that we pop up in front of someone's face. Now, there's lots of other push notifications and other things like that apps kind of do, but generally they send so many push notifications that it's kind of into the noise. A lot of people are kind of used to tuning a lot of those out, or they kind of get jumbled together depending on how you're processing those. Whereas texting really still stands out as one of the most intimate digital channels that we use. And so we still are very tuned into it. And it still, for most people, pops up right there on their phone, and you read the message or onto your watch or whatever you're using now, and you read it right away. So generally, almost all of them are opened within the first few minutes. That's the other part too, is not just do you get a 99% open rate in general, but something like 95% of them are opened within the first few minutes and seen within the first few minutes. So when you need to get something out quick, or you need to get feedback quick, you need to let people know now, there is just nothing better than this. And part of the reason for this too is that you can get a cell phone number for most of your people. You can't get, because some people might say, well, can't you do this with other push notifications or your own church app or things like that? And the answer is no, because you can get way more cell phone numbers from members than you can to download an app and turn on push notifications for that church app or whatever it is you're using with them. And so the reach rate and the open rate for texting is off the charts. And so you have to have this as a channel. We talk so much about how effective email is, because email is still better than all of those other things as well. That's why we focus on email and texting here. But anytime we talk about email, there's almost always a caveat in there of except for text messaging, because it is that much more effective. Now, it's not for everything. And like I said, because it is so disruptive, you have to be very selective about when you use it. Because if you use it too much, then you burn that bridge, and now it's no longer a channel for you anymore. So you got to be careful. And we're going to talk about that in another, I think next week's episode, we're going to tackle what should you text? What kind of things should I say? What things should I not say? What things should I not text about? So we're going to talk about some of that soon. So we won't get into that today, but those are really important too, that now that you have this powerful tool, how can we use it responsibly so that we get all the benefits of it? So certainly that you do have to be more careful because it is so powerful, but you can't ignore it. You're missing out big time if you're not using texting at your church.
Yeah, I always love the adage that we say a lot is texting is so effective that before people decide whether they want to read it, they've already read it, which is why it's something to be careful with. But again, it's just super effective. Yeah. So that's number one. Number two is doubling attendance, or maybe you could just say more broadly, doubling participation. I love these stories. I can think of a couple offhand, but you can just think conceptually. So say, you've got everybody, I guess in non-COVID times, you'd have everybody in front of you on Sunday, right? Captive audience, may or may not be listening to the announcements, but you remind them that you've got, a Holy Day Mass on Thursday or a big church-wide event on Wednesday or something, and they have Sunday, the rest of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday or Thursday to forget about it. And odds are they will, regardless of whether or not they're probably all well-intentioned and are interested in it. So one of the ways that texting is super powerful is just sending a text the day before. It allows you to be really timely, right? One particular example of this, it wasn't a midweek kind of thing, but it was a natural disaster. There's a church over in Iowa, St. Patrick's in Cedar Rapids, I think, if I'm not mistaken. We tell this a lot on our webinars, but they had floodwaters come in one year. It was a couple of years ago, and the church was flooded, the parish center was flooded, all these sorts of things. They had Flocknote at their disposal, so they just sent a really quick text out to 600 or 700 people, and they reported back getting hundreds of responses. I think about a dozen calls within like 5 or 10 minutes. People drove to the church to help to bring boxes, help them pack it all up, and they suffered pretty minimal damages as a result. So it's just this really tangible way that it can really be a game changer. Again, it's not going to be something that you're blasting out every day, God forbid, but it's something that it's there when you need it. And I mean, it's not even an if you need it anymore. I mean, I think if the coronavirus pandemic taught us anything, it's that crises do happen. It's not an if, it's a when they happen. So you need to be prepared for these sorts of things to be able to pivot to kind of be agile in terms of being able to reach your people when you need to, right?
Yeah, we get stories like this all the time. People saying I doubled the number of people I normally had show up for, like you said, a holy day or some regular event they have. Quadrupled even, I've heard before, where they said we had 4 times as many people show up. And it's true. This is an exaggeration because of what you said. There's a couple reasons why it's so effective. One is it is the timeliness of it. So the proximity to the event. So this is talking about sort of using it as a reminder. So again, getting that reminder Wednesday night about something happening on Thursday versus hearing it on Sunday is night and day difference in terms of how many people respond, show up, get involved in it. It's really that simple. It feels magical, but it's not. It's just telling them at a closer time, reminding them at the right moment. The other reason is the context of the announcement. So telling somebody on Sunday when they're not planning their week right now, I'm not scheduling out what I'm doing. I'm not figuring out when I'm going to do this and when I'm going to do that. And I'm probably kind of tuned out already on Sunday because I get used to hearing if you've done a bad job with announcements and announcing things that are not really for me. Most people go into auto tune out mode when announcements hit. So telling people in that context is just not effective. You got to break out of that and find other times and places to do it. Now, they're in front of you, so it's an important time to take advantage of that. But there's a reason why they've sort of built up this, ability to tune out a lot of things that you're saying. This is one way to break out of that. And again, hearing it on the context of, say, Wednesday night, when I'm making my final plans for, what do I need to remember to do in the morning? What am I doing differently tomorrow than I normally do? When I'm planning for the next day is the appropriate time to hear about something like that in many cases, right? So anyway, there's a couple of key reasons for that, but we see it all the time. It is not isolated to a few, anomalous incidents here. Reminding people with a text message at the right time in the middle of their busy week will double or better your attendance for regular events, holy days, special events, all those things.
Yeah. So that's number 2, right? Doubling attendance, participation. The third one is empowering all of your ministry leaders. So how does texting help a church empower all of its ministry leaders?
Yeah. So this is really important too, because we've talked about using this in an emergency, which happens. Hey, we need a bunch of people to show up and help us with X. We have flooding. We have a tree down across the driveway. We have whatever. Masses are canceled because of a blizzard. Schools, delayed starting this week, because of COVID changes or something, where you have all these, real life last minute changes and news that you need to get out to everybody. Great. But that's kind of not even the main way that I think it helps a church use that text messaging helps a church with improving their communications. The primary way is empowering each of your ministry leaders to be able to use it with all of their different groups that they're texting with. Because to be honest, like we've already kind of hinted at, the average member of your church doesn't want to probably get a lot of text messages to everybody. Okay. It's not, we've seen some pastors get away with like, I'm going to text you the one most important thing on my mind this week. Right. So that's a great way to bring the community together. But any more than that, and if you don't do that well, you're going to be pushing it with a good group of your members that are just not that engaged. They don't want the text message every week, which again, you put them on a different group maybe and say, hey, if you want one text from the pastor each week talking about the most important thing he thinks is going on this week in our community, get on this list. And then you can sign up for it and everyone doesn't have to get it. So there's really a lot of power in segmenting your groups and communications so you get people plugged in to the groups that want those communications. But generally, the more engaged the group gets, or the more engaged the person gets involved in different groups, the more open they are to getting more frequent disruptive communications like a text message, and the more they need them because they're really involved and are doing things with that group. And so giving each ministry leader the ability to text their people is really, really important. And then, of course, you run into issues. Well, how do you help them do it in a safe environment way that protects minors and vulnerable people? And so those are things we've built into Flocknote to be able to make it safe environment so that each ministry leader can actually text message the people they need to, whether it's teens or volunteers or whoever, protect their own contact info, their own personal cell phone number, still capture replies, have one-on-one text message conversations that are still, again, safe environment compliant because they're going through and being tracked by Flocknote to where admins can see it. But you can still do all of that. So one-on-one texting, small group texting, each ministry, reminding people, getting people plugged in, getting feedback from your people, just texting them a question and saying, hey, what'd you think of that last night? Hey, what date would be best for you? And again, these people will get that and open it in a few minutes. And in a few minutes, you've got people all replying back with all this information that you didn't have before. So it's really powerful way to get feedback. But again, you got to have something a text messaging tool that will capture that feedback well for you. These are all things we've built into Flocknote. But of course, there's other text messaging tools as well that you might be using that may or may not have those features built in. But those are important parts. So again, don't think about it in terms of just the emergency text, which is important and necessary, especially when you don't think you need it, because then it hits and you weren't ready. So make sure you got that capability. But when it comes to just regular communication, mobilizing people, getting people to show up, getting people to reply back and give you some feedback on something, there is no other better communication channel than text messaging if you got the right tool to do it. So definitely encourage those three reasons. The first one, 99% open rate. The second one is doubling attendance or better for all of your events and things you have going on that you're promoting. And 3 is also to empower all of your ministry leaders to be able to do their jobs better and engage their people more effectively.
Yeah, 100%. Again, this is great. Yeah. So hopefully that was convincing for any of you out there who have been hesitant to venture into the realm of texting your people. But that does it for our topic today. But before we go, we're going to bounce over and take a listener question for our People Got Church Problems segment. All right, our listener question today comes from Donna. Donna says, how can we make sure we are informed when someone dies in the parish so that if I know them, I could attend the funeral or service? So many times I find out at Mass the following week when it is too late.
Yeah, so we do hear this not infrequently. And of course, this is a problem if the main way your church reaches folks is on Sunday. So they have to show up on Sunday in order to get a bulletin or hear an announcement. So then if they stop showing up on Sunday, you have no way to reach them, number one. But 2, you can't reach them in between Sundays very well because they're not there. So this is where, again, building up your database of email addresses, and it's a great topic for today, cell phone numbers, because text messaging might be the way to let people know about that. Most likely, probably an email. So an email going out to your community, letting people know this, person in our community died. We're having a funeral on Friday. And that's what Donna's saying here is a lot of times something like that might happen on a Monday. The funeral's happening Thursday, Friday, Saturday, before you go to church next Sunday to find out it even happened. And so people are finding out someone died and the funeral's already happened. So the ability to reach your people in between Sundays is really, really important. And again, you can't get most people to like your Facebook page. You can't get most people to check your website regularly. You can't get most people to download your app, but you can get most of your people's email addresses and cell phone numbers. So make that your mission as a church. If you don't do anything else in terms of all your other communication issues, first thing, get everybody's email address and cell phone number. Because if you have that, now you can get anything else. You can reach them directly and effectively in between Sundays, anytime you need to, everybody at once, one particular group, one individual person. However you need to do it, you can do it anytime you need it. So it's so important to do that. And we're going to have some more episodes on that soon too, where we talk about, well, how do you do that? How do I convince people to give me their email address? And how do I collect it? And how do I get their cell phone numbers? We're going to talk about all that stuff too. But make that your mission from a communication standpoint. And then you'll be able to solve this kind of problem so you can keep people in the loop in between Sundays and whenever you need to.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Donna, for that question. We hope that was a help. That is all the time we have for today on this episode of the Finding Uno Show. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, review, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening on iTunes or another podcast app. But before we bounce today, we're going to kick it on over to our friend Liz to find out where we found Uno today.
Hey everyone! This week, Uno trekked to Elmhurst, Illinois, and was spotted with our friend Faith at Visitation Parish. Faith is the daughter of one of the communication managers at the parish, and we adore her enthusiasm for Uno. Thank you, Susan, for sending us this photo, and thank you, Faith, for being such a wonderful friend of Uno's. If you haven't yet, be sure to test out super texting. You can send images and longer text messages in Flocknote with this amazing optional add-on feature. So if you're looking to take your text messages to the next level, then super texting is for you. Also, please don't forget to send us a photo if you find Uno. So whether it's your flock socks, maybe it's your Uno tee, an Uno sticker on your laptop or your water bottle, whatever it is, we want to see it. So send us a picture. howdy@findinguno.com is our email address, and we may feature you in a future episode. Until then, we'll see you next time on the Finding Uno Show. Bye-bye.